Welcome. These will be my thoughts on The Ninth Jedi, Season 1, Episode 7, The Jedi Strike Back. The episode is for ages 12 and up, so will this video be. There will be spoilers for the episodes leading up to and including this one, including the backdoor pilot, and another episode that I absolutely love. Yes, personally, I do think this episode is great enough to overcome the obvious issue that the title of it makes it sound like one of those knockoffs, like Transmorphers and Alien versus Hunter, I think are some of the titles. Anyway, yeah, this is mostly going to be chronological, at least that's the idea. So yeah, this is a really fantastic lead-in to, I can hardly wait. It won't be very many days before I do the season and I suppose possibly series finale. But yeah, the once again, there's enough action that it doesn't feel, because it's one of those things. Okay, so you have 8 episodes, and I mean, some of these, like I think this one barely broke 20 minutes. So it's like, you sure you don't want to just like release a movie, or maybe like, well, let's see, I guess a two-part movie, maybe something like that. But there's just enough in each episode that it never feels like they're just treading water. And I think that does pretty much cover what I wanted to, the sort of general stuff. So yeah, getting into, yeah, it's the, we have the, let's see, yeah, it starts with the various people reaching. Yeah, I did think it was very nicely done. I thought that was Nawam's forces. They're arriving, early on, but they got there later. But there were a bunch of others that got there beforehand. That was a really cool way to do that. And I think that pretty much brings us to the yeah, some really great scenes of people, meeting back up with each other and talking about, you know, having missed each other and such. And, I felt like they struck a good balance between, because ultimately the episode doesn't spend that long on it, but it's just enough time that there feels like there's some emotional catharsis there, because we've been waiting for this for a while. But also it's like, okay, but let's not grind the pacing to a halt right before the big finale. Gotta sustain interest from the audience. But let's see. I appreciate that the episode is roughly 10% people handing each other lightsabers, or just turning them on to show how, to demonstrate something about them. And yeah, the part where, oh, who's that? And this is Kara, Kara, and she runs in, very tearful, but yeah, powerful, and powerful rather. Reunion is the word, yes. And yeah, the thing about, how do you, so yeah, the the show verbalized. I think I said roughly the same thing in my video on, I guess was it the episode before this one? I guess it was the one before. I forget, but whatever. This thing of like, well, how do you stop people who are trying to do violence without using any violence yourself? Once they've gotten to the point of violence. Obviously, in real life, I think violence should only ever be the last resort. And most of the time, if you really want to prevent great violence, it tends to be like getting, doing preventative measures, social programs and such, if you just use violence when someone else uses violence, a lot of the time you're just going to get stuck in this vicious cycle of retaliation. Just it's something not everyone, some people think that violence, can solve just like tons of problems, and I absolutely disagree. It becomes a vicious circle. It just keeps going and going, never stops. That's what makes it vicious and a circle. And I suppose that pretty much brings us to the yeah, I like the bounty hunter saying that he's got some real choice lines here. The thing about like, I mean, I wouldn't exactly blame you if you struck me down right now, but I am working for your daughter, and then, the lightsaber. And then after, you've got the thing about like, one of the strongest Jedi that I've ever faced. You mean the ones you kidnapped and or killed? Yeah, I mean, technically, I don't suppose you're wrong. It's a factual statement. Just he's not like, because again, there's this thing like he says, like, listen, if you want to kill me over the things I did, I get it. But he's also like, I remember kidnapping and killing Jedi. And the let's see. I think that pretty much, yeah, the flashback was very sweet. Kara as a baby playing, or not quite baby, but very little, playing with 4 9s. And I suppose that pretty much covers it. Yeah, and the bit where, she's like, I don't know if I'm worthy of a lightsaber, or something along those lines. That was great exchange. And I suppose that is it. Yeah, so that's when Nawam and the others show up. But well, yeah, right. So the yeah, I appreciate that the Jima came right out and said, I don't know. I've been trying to figure out how do you stop someone evil who's doing violence without using violence against them, because like, yeah, how else would he have stopped once he figured out that the other Jedi, yeah, the way he was making peace, the quote unquote diplomacy. And I think that is the okay, so I just have to say out loud, because I'm willing to acknowledge that I have very much been not just on, I suppose I don't know if I feel comfortable claiming that I am the driver of the please stop within like official Star Wars projects making new Death Stars train. But I'm definitely I've been on that train for some time now. Listen, this episode, if they can do it like this, then I mean, I hope they don't do it again anytime soon. But this is kind of how you do it. Like the thing about like, well, look at how, powerful and massive this thing is. Not only would it destroy the target, it would annihilate everything in its path. And then someone has to spell it out. So we're fighting for the future in the entire galaxy. Like, holy crap. See, that's how you do it. Like, you make it that, like, just ridiculous of, holy crap. And, I suppose, yeah, so they fly off, and, yeah, we have the bit with, Gino saying, oh, I'll get the crystal, and, yeah, the one guy being like, why does he do that? And then Noam has to spell out because he wants revenge. And then the other guy's like, revenge? Yes, revenge. He is a Sith. He feels humiliated by his defeat in battle. He is confident that he'll win because of his upgrades. He has a shot at it. Yes, revenge. That is exactly what is yeah. Sorry, was that me explaining it to him like he's 4? I guess my head's still stoked on that manicuring thing video about you know, the surveillance and the guy trying to explain it to the tech guy. Anyway, why they're so hated, rather. Anyway, I think that does pretty much... There's at least one more thing I wanted to make sure to say. Yeah, some fantastic outer space battle stuff, and yeah, once the they were flying out there, I was thinking, how is there another episode? Oh, they turn back, of course, because now yeah, the last episode, Geno is gone, but Nawam is out there. Jima badly wants to stop him, and yeah, that was kind of like, Jima asked you for like one thing recently, and you're not gonna honor your promise on that. Okay, but fair enough. I mean, that's a really difficult thing to actually, to actually live up to that promise. So that brings us to the, but yeah, and Geno, like, that was really awesome. That's some of my favorite lightsaber stuff in a while. And those, like, I guess it's like a twin-tipped spear, maybe, or something, but that was really, really awesome. And yeah, seeing him properly, he throws down the cloak, and then we see all the... Because we've seen more or less what he looks like, but we hadn't seen all these upgrades. So that's a really awesome way to do that. And then, the massive droideka, which I want to say, wasn't there one of more or less the same size on the Mandalorian? I feel like I've seen something like that before, but it was still really, really cool. And clever, this thing of, like, it's struggling to maintain its shield, and they realize that because there's like debris falling directly onto it. And it's one of those things where everyone feels the need to have a go at breaking the... Like, I get why you would try both with a lightsaber and a blaster. Not sure why multiple people feel the need to all... Like, it's the same basic lightsaber. Anyway. And the, I mean, I guess, listen, they don't want to be that person who, the rest of the group feels like, okay, so we're just carrying this person through this assignment. And I feel like that person... Yeah, it was a really epic way to, so at one point she's like, she grabs rocks and holds them up in front of her as a shield, and it looks like it blasts her, and then she's just like on top of it. As I've said before, I have tremendous respect for anime. This is one of those cases where I 100% understand why there are people who will sink like countless hours of their lives into just watching anime, because it genuinely... That was... Oh, I gotta briefly talk about the bit where the camera is like going backwards as the, like, during the space battle. Holy crap, that looked amazing. Also, you know what, not the biggest fan of when they do a similar thing in Revenge of the Sith, but I did think the shot, like, I guess it's not 100% the same shot, but there was a somewhat similar, in that movie, it's very much like the De Palma long take tracking shot thing as a small ship flies. Well, I guess more than one, but at least one small ship flies. And then here they do a similar thing. I thought it worked much better here. I was emotionally engaged in the scene before that shot. That was a really big reason why it worked here and not there, for me personally. And yeah, watching Jima actually take out Geno, like, I genuinely did think, oh, I guess this is it then. So at this point, I'm not entirely sure. I hope they're gonna let him survive the finale. But this is one of those situations where, sometimes when Jedi face, it doesn't necessarily go so well for them. I mean, they might win or the battle will be won by someone, but yeah. I guess then pretty much covers. I'm just gonna real quick mentally fast forward through the entire thing to make sure that I didn't forget. But yeah, I'm very excited for the finale, and I think it's gonna be another really awesome battle. And I suppose that pretty much, yeah, the yeah, I did really like that. So because they could have played it very differently. But when Kara meets back up with Jima, you know, they don't. I also I like the line where he says, "I really should chastise you, but anyway." But yeah, they meet back up, and it's very much like this kind of all is forgiven, water under the bridge kind of reunion. And then I think it's pronounced Bebeto shows up, and it's less that and more water under the fridge.